kingdoms, why people left all their property, even their wives and children, in search of this goal in India. Because the prize, this condition of consciousness, is beyond anything that has been discussed in modern literature. You find its descriptions only in Upanishads or the writings of Indian mystics like Guru Nanak, Kabir and others, or in the writings of some Sufis and Western mystics. The modern world has no knowledge, the modern learned world has no conception what it means. It transcends everything that you can have. It transcends all the technology. A man may have no amenities provided by modern science. He might be living in Tibet or in a backward area, only subsisting on the simplest food and dressed in the simplest clothes with a thatched roof over his head. The moment he becomes superconscious, he is now the emperor. No human being in any advanced country of the world can compare to him.
Is there anything in Judeo-Christian literature that speaks to this indescribable
It does.
experience?
Now, for instance, Christ's constant reference to the kingdom of God.
The superconscious state is the kingdom of God.
The kingdom of God. The kingdom of the Spirit. The kingdom of God. And he advises you to embrace poverty, to be submissive to God, to pray, to labor, to give up the world, the attractions of the world, because he had a more attractive thing to offer. You see, why I am inviting a research on Kundalini is because at the present moment there are three powerful incentives to human effort. One is the incentive of power. The other is the incentive of wealth. The third is the incentive of love. They are the three most powerful incentives to human effort. And what we find is that most people make it the goal of their life either to have power or to have wealth or to have sex. There is also another incentive, that is the incentive of knowledge, but only few people go to that line. But over and above all these incentives, infinitely above, is the incentive of superconsciousness. It brings the pleasures of all the four within its fold. The pleasure of sex, the pleasure of power, the pleasure of wealth, and the pleasure of knowledge. You gain knowledge from inside. The pleasure of sex is compensated by the perennial happiness that you feel, the perennious bubbling joy that you have always inside. The incentive of power is fulfilled, for you see yourself as a king. You see yourself beyond death, beyond the limitations of flesh, spread all over the universe. You see that you are all. You are a part of the all, the part of the infinite. And therefore that craving for power is fulfilled. And as for wealth, you see that everything is yours. It comes out from you. It may be materially you may not have it, but in your consciousness you are the Lord, you are the King of all. So this is the reason why I say that research on Kundalini provides the only counterblast to the nuclear power, to the modern race for armament, to the division of mankind into different nations, because it eliminates all these four lusts or incentives or passions, and in their place brings within the grasp of man an everlasting treasure, a paradise on earth, of which we find only partial descriptions in the accounts of the mystics. It is not that the man has to leave the world. It is the evolutionary impulse. Man has to live as a man I mean, the race has to live as the human race, ruled both by the intellect and by intuition, not only one-sided. It has to live, it has to enjoy everything. In fact, all what technology is supplying you with is needed by you as the Superman. You will need everything, but in a moderate way, in a natural way, in a healthy way, without creating division in the world, without leading to war, without leading to hatred, without leading to malice, without leading to envy. Everything and much more, this is the highest prize of heaven for man, and it is for this that all the religions and all the prophets came on earth.
So enlightenment then is an experience that can totally fulfill all human desires beyond our imagination, and yet at the same time does not require the sacrifice of our intellectual or reasoning ability or our motivation to improve our condition.
Exactly. It is not only an experience, it is experience at present, when this vision can be had only for short spans of time. But it is the lasting asset of every human being of the future. He will live as a God. He will live with this consciousness on earth. And when you really start research on Kundalini, as you will find in the ancient books written about it, that when the power is awakened, he becomes the greatest seer, he becomes the greatest poet, he becomes the greatest philosopher, he becomes the greatest logician, he becomes strong, he becomes long-lived. These are things which are mentioned in the ancient books, which we are translating, and which are still not known very widely throughout the world, but which are known in India. When this research is done, and this model comes before the public eye, the model of the future man, that he attains to a treasure which not only fulfill all these desires and the intellectual needs of man, but goes beyond, which gives him a vision into the reality, into the real cause, into the creator behind the universe, that satisfies, more than satisfies, any ambition or desire that he could have. I can tell you that sometimes when in this supreme condition, as the mystics have experienced, one wishes that one were to leap into infinity and the body and stay in that condition of bliss and beatitude. It is an overpowering and overwhelming experience. Nothing can compare to it. No amount of funds, no amount of public applause. You see, I have been working in social spheres and many people followed me, but that is nothing. I would say that the president or the prime minister of the mightiest country in the world is a poor human being when denied this vision. It is something which is overwhelming, stupendous. So it is for this reason that religion came. It is for this reason that great saviors and great prophets advised human beings to devote themselves to this line, to the search for God, to the search for their inner being, because what it brings to you fulfills everything that you can dream of or desire.
Pandit, you have said that your purpose in urging Kundalini research is to awaken humanity to its own potential in order to divert possible dire consequences for the future of humanity, which will result if the world continues to follow its present disastrous course, which is not in tune with the natural laws governing our existence, with the operations of nature. you have also written extensively in a book called The Shape of Events to Come about what specifically will happen. Would you comment, please, on the course of the future of the human race as it has been shown to you in higher consciousness?
Generally speaking, I am not a believer. I mean, I have not been a believer in prophecy, generally speaking. And I had also not much thoughts about the future when the awakening occurred. But as soon as I started to write at the age of 49, that is after now 15 years of the awakening, one of the first verses that came to me was, "O people of the world, unite and pave the way to peace sublime. Divided you yourself invite disastrous wars, unrest and crime." This was perhaps the first verse that came in English. And since that time, for all these nearly now 25 years, whenever I write, there is a reference to the coming events. I do not say that what I say is in the nature of a prophecy or a prediction. What I assert is that this writing is in the nature of a prognosis. I will explain myself a little further. Let us assume, for the sake of argument, that human evolution is not a haphazard process, but is planned and designed. Let us also assume that a certain state of superconsciousness, or I should say a God consciousness, is the ultimate target towards which human beings are evolving. To establish a divine kingdom on earth and even to conquer other planets in space. Let us again suppose that human beings are unaware of this process of evolution, and they adopt modes of life and social or political orders which are diametrically opposed to the evolutionary drive in their bodies. Let us assume it for a moment. Now, since evolution is the design and the plan of heaven, or let us say of nature, there must be devices and safeguards already ordained or inbuilt in our systems or in our brains, which would